Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending our session on responsible AI by design. My name is Calliope Spiridaki, and I work for SAS, the global software vendor and leader in data analytics. We will talk today about ethics and AI, how this fits in with the EU's digital strategy, and the core part of that strategy, which is the EU AI legislation that has been proposed. And finally, I will talk about what is responsible AI by design and how organizations should start planning to put it in place. Recently in the media, we see a lot of coverage on ethics and AI, the use of algorithms and machine learning by governments and corporations that is or may not be ethical. And that creates a lot of reluctance and uncertainty for the use of AI. That is further spurred by various societal developments recently that really require an ethical stance from organizations in all their operations and across different areas of social life. What is ethics? I think this is a quote that very well presents what ethics is. Ethics is knowing the difference between what you have the right to do by law and what is the right thing to do. Ethics is not an obscure notion that needs to be demystified by the academic world. It consists of moral values that have developed over centuries in our societies, and which we have considered important enough to enshrine into legislation, particularly in democracies and these types of societal systems. So if we think about the right to human life and the right to dignity and child rights protection over the years, these are now societal values that are part of our legal systems. I think in the same way, ethics of AI is and will continue to be enshrined in our legal system. So what we need is to go from those moral values that should underpin the use and development of AI to the lawful and responsible design and use of quality AI. And if we approach ethics of AI in this way, I think we already get a practical guide of how we need to be using and developing AI today and in the future. Many governments across the world and international organizations over the last 5 years or so have been looking at putting together AI principles as guidance for governments and organizations that use and develop artificial intelligence technologies and systems. And although one might think that those principles may differ across the world, if we look at the AI principles proposed from the US to China to the European Union, Japan, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, Australia, they all seem to come down to this list. Again, these are non-binding principles that are being proposed as a guide, but I will talk later on about binding legislation as well. So AI should be human-centric. It should be used for societal and environmental well-being. It should be transparent and explainable. It should foster diversity and ensure non-discrimination and fairness. It should be compliant with existing privacy protection rules, and it should encompass the necessary data governance. It should be robust and secure, safe in terms of physical harm for humans, and accountable. And all the body of work that is going on, particularly in the European Union around AI and AI ethics principles, is part of the EU's digital strategy. So I want to give the bigger picture of this strategy, because AI is based on data, and it is a whole ecosystem that organizations need to take into consideration when they think about AI and its responsible use. So a few years ago, we've had privacy legislation and the GDPR, and now we have various pieces of legislation that have been proposed or will continue to be proposed over the next couple of years, so that Europe puts in place its digital strategy. And these laws relate to data access, data sharing, cloud storage and analysis, both in terms of infrastructure, but also compliance with existing rules, cybersecurity, the regulation of content, harmful or illegal content on online platforms, competition law related tools to address the issues around data dominance by certain players in some sectors. And finally, the AI proposed legislation and the new AI liability framework that will also be proposed next year all are pieces of the same puzzle in order for Europe to put in place this digital strategy, which has the view of ensuring that Europe remains competitive in the decade to come and beyond. Now, specifically the EU AI Act, within this context, I think first it is important to say that artificial intelligence is already regulated today. There are rules around liability, around product safety, human rights protection, privacy, anti-discrimination that apply to all technologies, and that of course includes artificial intelligence. But because of the specificities of artificial intelligence technologies and the specificities of the uses of AI systems, which involve a lot of actors across the supply chain, there are certain legal gaps and gray zones. And when there is legal uncertainty, that does not help the update of the technology, because organizations that use and develop AI are reluctant and too cautious, and consumers and citizens don't have the necessary trust in order to foster the update of the technology. So Europe is trying to legislate in order to address those legal gaps, firstly. Secondly, Europe would like to legislate artificial intelligence in order to remain competitive on a global scale. Whoever leads in artificial intelligence will rule the world. This seems to be common knowledge among world leaders, and it is a quote of one world leader recently. This speaks to the promise and to the power of this technology. So that's the second reason why Europe would like to legislate to ensure its competitive advantage. And I think the third reason is that much like with the GDPR, where Europe set a global standard for privacy protection, the European Union is hoping that its own societal and moral values will also set a global standard for how to use and develop AI in the future. As I said, Europe proposed the first horizontal legislation on artificial intelligence in April 2021, so a few months ago. And this law is currently being negotiated and will come into effect in around 5 years' time in Europe. It is an pages long legislation and quite comprehensive. It includes prohibited AI practices, so practices that will be banned in Europe in the future, such as social scoring, transparency obligations for a number of, for all artificial intelligence systems that are intended to be, that are intended to interact with humans. And it also includes mandatory requirements for users and developers of what is called high-risk AI. There is a list of high-risk AI uses and criteria for that list to be updated in the future. These include, for instance, AI systems used in education to evaluate students, or in the law enforcement context, or AI systems used by governments to allocate social benefits, and certain other uses. And for those types of AI systems and their uses, the requirements are around risk management, the training data and the data governance of the training data, record keeping obligations for developers and users across the life cycle of AI, requirements around robustness, accuracy, and human oversight. The law also includes a new enforcement system, requests member states to designate supervisory authority to ensure the legislation is respected, and much like with the GDPR, includes very high fines. Against this background, what is responsible AI by design, and how should organizations think about it? I'm borrowing the term by design from the privacy world, where by design means that responsible AI or responsible practices should be considered from the beginning of the conception of an AI product or an AI service. Essentially, what organizations need is to be able to use AI without fear or doubt or uncertainty about its lawfulness and its ethical performance. And in order to do that, I think we can look at the privacy experience and the privacy by design experience, and identify the pieces of the puzzle that is needed. And I think that includes choosing the right technology and ensuring good data governance and model governance going forward across the organization. Raising ethical awareness at the organization, ensuring the right training and skills at minimum for data scientists or data analysts, but really across the organization at management and the executive leadership level. Putting in place the necessary policies and processes that should also go beyond compliance for organizations that want to use the ethical use and responsible use of AI as a competitive advantage in the future. And finally, ensuring that the new legal framework that will be in place is taken into account. And I hope that this will be a legal framework that will provide clarity and certainty, that will not overburden organizations, and that will harmonize regulators' expectations across all EU member states, but also potentially globally in the future. This is what I had prepared for today. Thank you very much for listening to our session.
Data doesn't drive your organization, decisions do. It's the decisions you make with your data through analytics that allow you to move your business forward. Whether your data are on premises, in a public or private cloud, or at the edges of the network, analytics needs to be there with it. Today, organizations in every industry are moving to the cloud and making better analytical decisions with their data. Decisions that increase agility, cost savings, and scalability across the business, and enable a seamless experience to employees and customers. Move your analytics to the cloud and be future-ready with SAS and Microsoft. These two trusted industry leaders have formed a strategic partnership to further shape the future of AI and analytics in the cloud. by offering one of the leading advanced analytics and AI software platforms natively on Microsoft Azure, SAS gives you the power and freedom to innovate, withstand disruption, and accelerate growth. SAS delivers a broad set of analytics solutions spanning dozens of industries. With recognized expertise in analytics, data science, and machine learning, SAS can help you drive impact and shorten the path from data to intelligence. As the trusted cloud platform for 95% of the Fortune 500, Microsoft Azure makes deploying and managing SAS in the cloud faster and easier than ever. With this partnership, the goal is to empower everyone in every organization with new ways to unlock critical data insights with AI and analytics so that they can make trusted decisions. Reimagine analytics in the cloud with SAS and Microsoft Azure.